the movie while the conversation is happening? I guess not, right? Just the speakers. So Melissa and Basir.
No, we're all going to be on camera. So the format is it's like an open room.
Okay.
Whoever has signed up, that's why we limit the number of participants, so everybody can keep their cameras on, and so that it mimics the idea of coming together in a city club in person. Of course, I mean, if you need to go or take a break, you can put it on. You can turn your camera off and come back. But the idea is we encourage people to keep engaged and present.
Right. Okay.
I'm sure you, as a professor, can relate to to that with all the distant learning.
Absolutely. To be honest,
Basir, welcome.
Hello.
Hi, how are you? Nice to see you.
Thank you.
Buthaina from Cinema Akil.
Buthaina. Nice to meet you.
You too. I just wanted to check a few things before we get into the call. Melissa, I just wanted to make sure I'm pronouncing your name right. It's Chiovenda or Chiovenda?
Chiovenda.
Chiovenda. Okay, yeah. Great.
Perfect. One second. Great. I sent a couple of messages on the chat to see if everybody can see them. So I'm going to assume that everybody can hear me, but if you can't, please do let me know. I'm going to go over just some basic rules. So this is an open discussion, so we do want you guys to participate, those who are joining as an audience. If you've watched the film, if you have any questions to ask, if you have anything to contribute to the discussion, it will be much appreciated. You feel free to unmute yourself and discuss what you'd like to discuss. Otherwise, if you're not comfortable with the camera, you can always use the chat in order to insert your comments, your questions, or your, whatever it is that you would like to say. I will give the floor to Bethania to introduce. We do have perhaps a few more people joining, but I guess they will join as they come in, since we are already a little bit over time. And if anybody has any questions on anything, you can also message me directly. My name is Luz, but I am here under Cinema Akil.
Thank you, Luz. Hi, everybody. Good evening, and thank you for joining us for what is unfortunately going to be our last talk for 2020. It's been a very tumultuous year, to say the least, but we've taken a lot of solace in being able to connect with you all, and are really happy to see, well, not familiar faces, but familiar names joining us tonight from our very first CineTalks back in April, and coming back to have this conversation with us tonight. This is how you know it's been a few months of adaptation to this Zoom format. We started off with a lot of people, showing up, wanting to be seen, and I think now there's a kind of a adaptation to the meaning of this mode of communication and togetherness as we hit our last CineTalks with very few people on camera, but equally engaged. So I hope we get to see you at some point throughout the night. Obviously do what's comfortable for you, but we love to to see who's here with us in the room, and hopefully be able to mimic this experience once it's safe back in our space at Cinema Akil, and and continue to have these conversations, because this is the essence of what CineTalk started around, is the ability to not only discuss films and to have conversations about them, but to really come together around this medium and the people that work on them and the stories they represent, and the worlds that they bring to our homes now, and also to our lives through the cinema going experience, which we're very strong believers in. We're here in Dubai, and our cinema is in full operation. Well, full is full in terms of the schedule, but we're still operating at the safe social distancing at 30%. Our outdoor season started last month, so that's another way of coming back to the cinema. And of course, we'll continue to bring you different formats of virtual exhibition. Without further ado, I want to take this opportunity to just quickly thank the Cinema Akil team, Luz and Momo. Luz, you can see here, and Momo is behind the camera, for their efforts in making CineTalks a project that they believe in, and that we can bring forward to you and share with our audiences, despite what's happening at the space and despite reopening. There's a shared belief in the importance of congregation around these conversations. So thank you to the team, and a big thank you to our newest partners in this endeavor, who also believe in the courage of taking the conversation outside of the space of academia and the classroom or the virtual classroom and into public space and public conversation. Zayed University is our first, partner on this CineTalks endeavor, and are joining us tonight to conclude this experiment for this year. A big thank you to Professor Nizar Amdari, Professor James Redman, and especially Professor Jimena Cordova, who was with us since the get-go as we conceptualized this project, and for having the vision to bring this conversation forward. Tonight, we'll be discussing the film that hopefully all of you watched, Just Like My Son, Sembra mio Figlio, from 2018. It's an Italian, Croatian, Belgian co-production directed by Costanza Quatriglio, screened outside of competition, the 71st edition of the Locarno Film Festival, and has toured many festivals after that. And it gives me great pleasure to welcome for this closing session our not one but three special guests for this very special edition. Dr. Melissa Chiovenda from Zayed University, poet, activist, journalist Basir Ahang, who's joining us here from the UK, and last but not least, our partner in this journey, Dr. Jimena Cordova, who is a historian. She's the chair of Humanities and Social Sciences Department at Zayed University, and will be introducing our guests and our joint project. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Busaina. Thank you very much. We just want to really briefly say thank you to Cinema Akil for welcoming us into this virtual space. We are so proud to be here, so grateful to have this opportunity to collaborate with Dubai's, only independent cinema. I think your work is fantastic, and we want to support it in as much as we can. And this is our first collaboration. I hope the first of many. We really wanted to just bring some of the work that we do, behind walls to the community, because we wanted to engage in meaningful conversations that would help us, that would empower us to get to know each other better, to gather understanding on the different issues that touch us all, especially in the kind of world that we all live under that has so many challenges, and we need to be collectively trying to overcome these challenges. So that was the idea. I want to thank our team for putting this team together as well, and really just wanted to touch upon three topics that I think the film illustrates really well, and I'm just going to put them out there to see if anybody wants to discuss them, but I'll leave the discussion in the hands of Dr. Melissa and Basir. So the topic of collective trauma and how personal stories are affected by large impact events, but also how history with a capital H can travel and be transmitted through personal stories. I think that's something really powerful that could be out there for discussion. The idea, of course, that we all live in a world that is moving very fast today, and migration affects us all. Of course, the movie focuses on the plight of refugees, and the more inequality we live in, the more climate change we have, the more we're going to live with the world that has refugees, and we need to be a part of this conversation. And the love story that is also a very universal topic, the love story between mother and son. So I'm just leaving this out there. I would like to introduce Dr. Melissa Chiovenda, who is going to direct this conversation. She is an assistant professor in the College of Humanities and Social Sciences. She's an anthropologist at Zayed University. She has her PhD from the University of Connecticut, and her dissertation concerned on collective trauma and the activism of the Hazara ethnic group, which is at the center of the movie. She spent 18 months in Afghanistan conducting ethnographic research. She knows many of these stories firsthand. And she's also been working in Greece with Afghan refugees who've left their homeland. And she has also introduced us to Basir Ahang, who is a poet, a journalist, an actor, and a member of the Hazara ethnic community. He now lives in Italy. He moved to Italy. He now lives in the UK. He has traveled the world, as a poet and as an activist. And we really just want to now pass this conversation on to you. And thank you very much for attending, everyone.
Mute. Great. Thank you so much for coming. And I'm very excited to get this chance to talk a bit about this film and my research. And I'm so excited too that my friend Basir was able to join us. Basir and I connected 10 years ago when I was just starting out my research. And I just sent him this email out of the blue because he was working as an activist, maintained a website about Hazara people and problems they faced, and it just turned out that he was in Italy, where my husband is from, Andrea, and he was also doing research in Afghanistan with me. He's actually going to help us out and translate a little for us tonight as well. So I think it's been 10 years really since we connected, and we've gotten to meet in Italy and spend time together. So this is really exciting. I wanted to start out and touch on some of the themes in the film that also were really important in my research. And I'm going to show kind of some slides that are mainly photographs and a little bit of background too about Hazaras, because, you know, on the one hand, I think we can look at this film and we can think of it as a universal story, a story of, you know, what happens to people who leave war zones, who become refugees, and then, you know, the different paths that they can take, right? You have some people like Nina in the film who remain very much rooted in Italy. She says she never wanted to go back. And then Ismail, who Basir plays, right, who gets pulled back to face the problems of his people and ultimately ends up back in Afghanistan. So in some ways, this is a more universal story, but in other ways, it's very much a story particular to Hazara people. And it is a film that can teach us about an ethnic group that makes up a pretty significant portion of the population in Afghanistan, but that don't always get the attention that maybe they should, given their particular history in Afghanistan. I'm very interested in this question of collective trauma. And when I watched the film and I saw Ismail, who is, you know, receives this kind of call, right, from the past and reconnects with his mother, it also seemed to me that he was being called back to that traumatic past. They seem to have escaped. It's a collective trauma and also an intergenerational trauma, right? And that it's something that is passed down from children or from parents to children, and so on and so forth. I'm also very interested in questions of place and people's rootedness to place. I was interested in that before I started working with refugees, because this is a very important part of the way that Hazaras assert themselves in Afghanistan as people who really do belong there. And given that they suffer from so much discrimination and even persecution and mass killings and even genocide at certain times, this is very important for them. But it's also, excuse me, it's also very important for refugees to think about the way that they deal with place. And these also themes come up in the film. So I am just going to share a few these slides. Most of it is pictures that I took in Bamiyan, but there's also, like I said, a few that deal a little bit more with history and whatnot. Let's see, there we go. So I thought often when I talk about the past, I jump around a bit, and I thought that I would start with a recent event. On November 24th, Bamiyan had its first suicide bombing, first attack in Bamiyan, really since 2001, since foreign intervention started in Afghanistan. This was a very significant event because it signified an attack on kind of the heart of a Hazara homeland. And this hadn't this hadn't been done before, right? I mean, Hazaras have been attacked in other parts of Afghanistan, but right in Bamiyan was quite jarring for people to see this happen. So this is a scene from that event, just very recently. Obviously, this picture I didn't take because I haven't been there this recently. But now, again, I don't know if everybody is familiar with who are the Hazaras, so I just wanted to kind of bring up some kind of key points. And I think this will also, because many people have heard of Bamiyan, but they don't actually realize they've heard of Bamiyan. So maybe it will also help you all to place Bamiyan and to place the Hazaras kind of in your mind about where you've heard from them. You can also see how they've kind of been erased in the conversation of Afghanistan. So the most commonly talked about story about Hazaras is that they're descended from Mongols, and that they were people who, when Genghis Khan went across Afghanistan, they were left behind in the valley of Bamiyan. Most Hazaras are Shia Muslims today, although there are a good number of Sunni and Ismaili Muslims as well. Many Hazaras, however, kind of reject this idea that they are descended from Mongols, and they claim descent from an earlier people. And these are the people, the Gandharans, who built the giant Buddha statues that were destroyed by the Taliban in 2001. So when I say that a lot of people have probably heard of Hazaras and have heard of Bamiyan, this is what I'm talking about. Most people have some idea that in Afghanistan, there used to be these two giant Buddha statues that were carved into the face of a cliff. And then right before the Taliban fell and international intervention started in Afghanistan, they were exploded they shot tanks at them, and then they used explosives, and they're completely gone now. There's just the empty holes in the cliff. So Hazaras who maintain this say that they later mixed with Mongols. Maybe they've had some mixing, but they have this really early, strong history to Afghanistan. And this is where they live. They're right in the center of Afghanistan. So this is also very kind of an important point. They're not at one of the edges or the margins where independence could be feasible. Hazara homeland is directly in the center. So when I talk about Hazara collective trauma, and when this reference to Hazaras being attacked and killed for a long time, for generations, is referenced, this is the history that we're talking about. Basir told me when we were talking about the film, he said, this isn't just the story of one person, this is the story of a generation. And I feel like it's even more than the story of a generation. This is the story of multiple generations of people. So again, this sort of intergenerational trauma that is passed down, that people just are sort of born into and take from their parents, because it goes so far back in history. So the kind of first really terrible event that happened for Hazaras was in the late 1800s. There was a king in Afghanistan called Abdur Rahman, and he carried out campaigns of centralization of the Afghan state all throughout the country. But when he attacked the Hazaras, it was particularly brutal. And as a result, 60% of the population was killed or enslaved or displaced. And in the film, we even see echoes of this past and the enslavement of Hazaras, which, technically, and slavery ended in Afghanistan in 1923, but you see the capturing and then even the selling of Hazara women. And that's something that's, kind of quiet, but it's very interesting that the film brought it up, and we can talk about that if somebody wants to talk about it, or Basir, right? The fact that the mistreatment, particularly of Hazara women and all that entailed, is like so directly referenced in the film, is quite interesting. Now, Hazaras have continued to be targeted in the Afghan Civil War between 1992 and 1996. There were a number of mass attacks on Hazaras that resulted in mass deaths. One particular on a neighborhood in Kabul called Afshar saw thousands of people being killed. The Taliban also carried out mass killings of Hazaras while they were in power. And after 2001, this has continued with initially Hazaras being targeted, particularly when they were traveling between their own population centers on roads, being taken out of vehicles and killed. And this still happens today, and this is also in the film. You had kind of in this earlier part of the 2000s and early 2010s, right? Attacks in Quetta, Pakistan, both suicide bombings that would kill large numbers of people and targeted attacks as well. And we also see this in the film. And then more recently, Hazara areas in Kabul have come under attack in kind of really horrific ways. Civilian targets like schools and educational centers and even maternity hospitals. So, you know, when you see all of this happening, you come to the conclusion that those who are perpetrating these acts really do have as a goal the extermination of Hazaras. I don't know how else to understand something like attacking a maternity hospital and killing newborn babies, right? So that was a bit heavy. I want to now kind of turn to this question of place, and trauma and place in Afghanistan for Hazaras, at least for other people too, probably are very closely linked. Signals of these past events are visible in the landscape. And, you know, I wanted to just take a minute to look at Afghanistan during this talk, because if you read something about the film before you watched it, you know that the film was filmed, of course, in Italy and then also in Iran. It was, of course, not safe to go to Afghanistan for Basir and the others involved, but I mean, particularly for Basir, who has had to leave as a refugee, but it also wasn't safe to go to Quetta and film the parts in Quetta, actually in Quetta, because these sorts of problems continue. And yet, you know, the end of the movie revolves around a return to Afghanistan. So even though, you know, this isn't necessarily the region that was depicted in the movie, or this isn't where Basir himself comes from, I'm going to share some pictures that I took that are different heritage sites and scenes that bring this place to life. So this is a graveyard and a memorial for a mass killing that happened by the Taliban right outside of Bamiyan Center. And then this is a similar scene in Yakolang, which is an area close to Bamiyan. These sorts of sites really dot the landscape, so people are constantly reminded of what has happened. Now this is one of the Buddha niches. So in the past, this is where one of those giant Buddha statues was located. And this whole valley is the valley where the town of Bamiyan is located. So you can really see these all throughout the valley. Hi. Oh, it's he's telling me to tell you it's also at an altitude of 3,000 meters. It's very high altitude location, just so you get an idea about what the landscape is like there. Here you can see, again, people going about their everyday life with these Buddha statues behind them. They're harvesting potatoes. And then you can see some of the bazaar closer to the Buddha niche itself. Something that I found very interesting about the Buddha niches was that many Hazaras identify themselves with them, and they make a point to say, you know what, that our ancestors are the Buddhas themselves. So this is, again, this kind of attempt to root themselves to the land and to say, you know, we belong here. you cannot get rid of us through genocide or through mass killings or whatever means you want to. If you remember in the film, Ismail says at one point this saying that is really a saying you hear very often in Afghanistan, unfortunately. The Uzbeks should go to Uzbekistan, the Tajiks to Tajikistan, and the Hazaras to Waristan, or the graveyard. And when Hazaras are, linking themselves up to something as ancient as the Buddha statues, they're countering this sort of attitude and saying, you know what, actually we belong right in Afghanistan where we are. So you see pictures like this that are often people's like social media profile pictures and things like that, that are very meaningful. It's complicated right now. I'll try later on to find that and share, what the statues looked at. Yeah, sorry, I didn't put that in. I'll try to find that for later. And then these are just, a few other kind of really important heritage sites in Bamiyan. This is Share Gogala. It's also been built by a Buddhist civilization, originally Buddhist civilization, the Warid dynasty, although not the same one that built the statues. This is a different group of people. And this was conquered by the Mongols that, again, the Hazaras are supposed to be descended from, but they say they're not. And this ancient city is also right in the middle of the valley. You can see it from the bazaar and you can see it from people's fields. And so there's a lot of talk and legends and kind of stories told about this. Sharigola means the city of screams or the city of sighs, because the legend is that when the Mongols came into the valley, well, there's quite a long legend, but I'll tell the short version, which is that everybody was killed, everybody was wiped out by them, except some few people. Birds. Well, except the birds, I was told. Birds. Yeah, it's just very evocative. But I mean, so it's a very sorrowful place too. This is a little bit away from the valley, but kind of still in the entrance as you're entering Bamiyan. Share Zohak, another Ghorid ancient site, also was attacked by the Mongols and destroyed by the Mongols. And then finally, this is Chilborj, which is in that other nearby area, Yakolang, another Ghorid site. So this is an area very rich and replete with these archaeological sites that, I think a lot of people try to disconnect Hazaras from by saying that they're Mongols who came later. And part of a Hazara activist project has been to say, no, we belong in Afghanistan, we belong to this land. So I'm going to finish up soon, but I want to just show a last few pictures that relate to these bombings that were happening in Quetta, and that are referenced in the film when Ismail arrives in Quetta and he finds a group of people who are holding a memorial remembrance for those who have died, probably in a suicide bombing in a bazaar that killed a little bit over 100 people. This happened several times in the early 2010s. And so it could very well be like the one referenced in the film is this memorial that I attended in Bamiyan. And so everybody, really Hazaras all over the world were holding these memorials and asking that these sorts of things be taken seriously and that the government of Pakistan and international community step in and stop these sorts of activities. And then just to wrap it up, this is a picture of Greece. So, Basir might remember this. This is when there was an attack on a protest march in Kabul carried out by Hazaras who were demanding electricity be brought to Bamiyan, but they of course were demanding many other kind of injustices be addressed as well. And the protest march was bombed, and initially 85 people were killed, but then the number killed kind of kept growing and growing. I think it was over 100 by the end because people succumbed to their injuries. And So a memorial was held in Greece, and while I was doing my research there, and I attended with a number of my Hazara friends in Greece. And you know, when I'm doing my research in Greece, something that I've been trying to kind of think about and write about are the ways that the Hazara refugees I work with are very present in Greece and in Greek political life, and you know, the life of a refugee in Greece. And yet at these certain moments, they can be transported, pulled back to Afghanistan in a very emotional way. Sometimes it's something like an attack such as this that spurs that. Sometimes it is a problem with their family that brings that on. And all of a sudden, you can see that they're not there in Greece anymore. They've really been pulled back to Afghanistan, even though they cannot actually travel to Afghanistan anymore due to being a refugee. And you know, it's considered too dangerous for them to return. So I think that, you know, in the film, we see this is exactly the experience that Ismail has. And this pulling back to Afghanistan, you know, I see it as this pulling back into that traumatic past. Maybe coming to terms with things and, you know, realizing himself and who he is more. But there's also a very serious cost to be paid for that. Think about what happens to his family and Hassan and everybody at the end. So I want to stop there. I want to turn over to Basir. Certainly, if anybody has any thoughts or questions at any time, jump in. But mostly, I'd like Basir to be able to talk now. So thank you. Stop sharing this. Good.
Ok, buongiorno a tutti. Innanzitutto vorrei ringraziare la dottoressa Basir Chiovenda per l'invito e l'organizzazione di questo interessante evento, il dottor Andrea Chiovenda per il supporto e la traduzione, dottoressa Jimena Cordova, Wetena, Luz, Zayed University, CineTalk e a voi tutti per la vostra partecipazione.
So I'll start the translation at this point. So hi everybody. I would like first to thank Dr. Melissa Kerr Chiovenda for the invitation and for organizing this interesting event, and Dr. Andrea Chiovenda for his support and translation, and Dr. Jimena Cordova and Luz and Butena. And Akil in general, and all of you for your participation tonight.
Il film Sembra mio figlio, che avete visto o che andremo oggi a vedere, è un film basato su una storia vera.
So the movie that we all watched and that we will comment on today, Sembra mio figlio, is based on a true story.
La regista infatti ha deciso di girarlo dopo aver conosciuto a Roma un ragazzo Hazara, oggigiorno uomo, rifugiato in Italia, Muhammad.
So the director, in fact, decided to shoot the movie after meeting in Rome a young Hazara boy, now a man, who was a refugee in Italy, Mohammed Jan Azad.
La sua drammatica storia, tuttavia, fa da eco a milioni di altre storie di Hazara costretti ad abbandonare l'Afghanistan a causa della guerra e delle persecuzioni etniche.
So his harrowing personal story, however, reflects millions of other stories of Hazara individuals forced to flee Afghanistan because of the war and ethnic persecution.
Personalmente mi sentito molto vicino alla storia di Muhammad Janazat e per questo motivo, se a livello attoriale interpretare il ruolo di Ismail è stato facile, a livello emotivo non lo è stato per nulla.
So personally, I felt very close to Muhammad Janazad's story. Thus, while it was not a problem for me to interpret his character from a purely technical standpoint, it was much more complex to do so from an emotional one.
Ripercorrere la sua storia mi ha infatti riportato alla memoria diversi eventi vissuti in prima persona, come ad esempio quello che avvenne a Ghazni nel 1998, quando io avevo 14 anni.
So going through his personal history brought back to my own memory events that I experienced firsthand, like, for example, one that took place in Ghazni in 1998, when I was 14 years old.
Dopo, nel 1998, dopo 3 anni di resistenza Hazara, nel novembre i talebani erano riusciti ad ottenere il controllo della provincia.
And so after 3 years of Hazara resistance, in November 1998, the Taliban managed to gain control of Ghazni province.
Durante la guerra i talebani avevano bloccato tutte le strade che conducevano alle aree abitate e bloccando le merci in arrivo e soprattutto le scorte di cibo.
So during the war, the Taliban had blocked all roads that led to inhabited areas, denying all supplies from reaching the province, particularly food.
Ricordo che molte famiglie non avevano nulla da mangiare ed erano così affamate da arrivare a nutrirsi di erba.
So I remember many families had nothing left to eat and were so hungry they took to eating simple grass.
Molti bambini morivano di fame. Un mese dopo i miei genitori decisero di mandare me e mio fratello maggiore in Pakistan perché la situazione era troppo pericolosa.
Many children died of starvation. 1 month later, my parents acknowledged that the situation was too dangerous and decided to send me and my older brother off to Pakistan.
Come avete visto nel film, ambientato nella prima parte in Italia e nella seconda in Pakistan, sono moltissimi gli Hazara che risiedono oggi in Pakistan.
So as we have seen in the movie, located partly in Italy and partly in Pakistan, there are many Hazaras today who reside in Pakistan and more precisely in Quetta.
Gli Hazara iniziarono a trovare rifugio in questo paese già nel XIX secolo, quando dovettero fuggire al tentativo di polizia etnica messo in atto dall'emiro afghano Abdurrahman Khan.
So Hazaras began to look for refuge in this country, Pakistan, already in the 19th century, when they had to escape the policies of ethnic cleansing carried out by Afghan Amir Abdurrahman Khan.
Queste polizie etnica continua anche fino oggigiorno, e anche talebani avevano tentato tra nel 1996 e 2001.
And these policies of ethnic cleansing continued also during the Taliban regime, and also during this regime, the Hazaras kept going to Quetta between 1996 and 2001.
Purtroppo, come vedremo nel film, anche la fuga presenta numerosi pericoli. Io lo stesso, quando lasciai Ghazni sulle strade per Kandahar, venni fermato dai talebani.
So unfortunately, as we have seen in the movie, also flight entails many risks. So fleeing did entail many risks. And I myself, when I left Ghazni, was stopped by the Taliban on the way to Kandahar.
La strada era completamente dissestata. Verso mezzogiorno arrivammo a Kandapusht, in provincia di Zabul, e il camioncino si era fermato vicino ad un punto distrutto durante la guerra con i sovietici, e l'autista ci aveva fatto scendere.
So the road was largely devastated, and around 12 noon we reached Kandapusht in Zabul province. Our truck stopped by a bridge that had been demolished during the war against the Soviets, and the driver made us get out of the vehicle.
La macchina doveva passare dal canale che si trovava sotto a quel ponte, perciò dovevamo scendere per alleggerire il peso del veicolo e perseguirlo a piedi. Una volta scesi dal camioncino, restammo a bocca aperta. Il canale che dovevamo attraversare era pieno di corpi ammassati. C'erano donne, uomini e bambini Hazara.
So our truck stopped by a bridge. Oh no, sorry, I already gone that. So the truck had to go through the canal underneath the bridge. So we had to proceed on foot to decrease the weight of the vehicle. And once off the truck, our jaws dropped. The canal we had to wade was full of corpses, amassed one over the other. There were Hazara men, women, and children.
In quel momento eravamo così terrorizzati di non riuscire nemmeno a gridare, piangere o semplicemente a chiedere il perché.
At that moment, we were so terrified, we did not manage to scream, weep, or simply ask ourselves why.
L'autista si mise a gridare di salire immediatamente in macchina. Noi obbedimmo senza una parola. Dopo molte ore arrivammo finalmente in Quetta, Pakistan, dove trascorsi con mio fratello 2 anni.
So the driver immediately started yelling at us to rejoin him into the vehicle. And we did, as he said, without uttering a word. After many hours, we finally reached Quetta, Pakistan, where I lived for 2 years with my brother.
Sono molte perciò le vicende raccontate nel Sembra mio figlio, che ho vissuto in prima persona. Per questo motivo questo film non è solo un film, ma la storia di un'intera generazione.
And many are the vicissitudes represented in the film that I have experienced personally. And for this reason, Sembra mio figlio is not simply a movie, but the story of an entire generation.
Grazie.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Basir. So I think it'd be great now if we could have a discussion, and if anybody has any thoughts or questions or wants to ask, in particularly Basir, about what it was like to have this sort of background and yet make a film like this that deals with it. I think that would be really great. He also has a poem that he's written that we could read, but maybe let's put that towards the end, kind of interest of time. And if anyone just wants to kind of raise your hand or type in the chat box. Let us know what you'd like to talk about or hear more about.
Nobody has any questions so far?
I do.
Oh, great. Hi, Mia.
Hi, Lucy. I'm unable to raise my hand on the. Can I go ahead with my question?
Yes, of course. Please go ahead.
In the around the end, I think it was the last scene or almost the last scene where he's there to look for his mother. There's a woman who comes forward, but we feel that she's not actually his mother because he doesn't recognize her. And it seemed to me as if he decided to pick her so that he will have saved at least one woman. Or was she really his mother and he wasn't able to recognize her?
So, Basir, vuoi che ti traduca o traduco solamente?
No, posso rispondere perché questo è prima, questa è la scelta della regia, quella per in questo film e per personaggio dei film, tutte quelle donne che erano lì e che vedete nel film, tutte le donne poteva essere la sua madre.
Aspetta, fammi tradurre il pezzettino, sennò poi mi scordo. So this was a choice of the director. So for the purposes of the movie and the meaning that it has, all women that you see there when they're grouped together in front of Ismail, they all could be his mother.
Perché tutte le donne Hazara una volta nella loro vita hanno avuto un'esperienza simile.
Because all Hazara women, at least once in their lives, have had a similar experience.
Poi nel film la donna che fa parte nel film, che esce con il personaggio, è quella mia madre vera.
And specifically, also as a meta meaning here, I would say, and this is my own thing. I'm not sorry. I'm introducing I'm a bad translator. So the woman that comes out is in fact Basir's mother. The literally the actress that comes out and goes out with Ismail is Basir's mother.
In real life.
Yes.
Yeah, that I read.
Grazie per la domanda.
Thank you for your question.
Thank you.
So, any other? Yeah, Dia.
Hi, I have kind of I hope it's not too personal of a question, but as Melissa was talking about her fascinating talk about the idea of collective trauma and being pulled back into the traumatic past when particular events occur. And I know, I think we could all relate that to like Syria and Iran and like other areas where refugees are coming from. But for Basir, you know, how does his poetry, is that the way, is there a method towards resolution of that somehow? Or in his experience, you know, does the film maybe somehow represent a resolution, or does he find that a way of just coping with that forever being pulled back into the traumatic past as it is ongoing still? I hope that's not too personal of a question to ask.
Andrea, una parte della domanda non ho capito.
Sì, cioè lei ti sta chiedendo se il fare questo film e l'andare attraverso gli stages, no, di questo film ha anche funzionato, anche rappresentato per te una sorta di risoluzione nel tuo problema personale di essere risucchiato costantemente indietro in Afghanistan, oppure se il processo è talmente esistenziale che sarai comunque costretto, condannato, no? a essere tirato indietro in Afghanistan ogni volta che qualcosa succederà.
Purtroppo dal momento che ho lasciato l'Afghanistan, ogni giorno, ogni mattina, ogni ora, adesso è facile attraverso social media, che succede qualcosa nell'Afghanistan, io col pensiero torno lì e sono lì.
So since I left Afghanistan, every day, every hour, I am back there, especially thanks to social media, thanks to all the connections that I have with social media and people who are there. It's something that I feel every moment of my day.
Purtroppo quello che sta succedendo in Afghanistan, che sta succedendo particolarmente per gli Hazara, non lascia nemmeno un giorno come tranquilli e non pensare.
So unfortunately, with all that has been happening, with all that happens to Hazaras on a regular basis, almost on a daily basis, one cannot simply be left alone, so to speak. One can't simply relinquish the thought or the memory.
E tragedia è arrivato per gli Hazara, particolarmente la tragedia è arrivato a livello che ormai non è possibile raccontarlo con le parole, con le iscrizioni. In questo momento per forza dobbiamo usare l'arte, poesia e letteratura.
So and the tragic level of this has gotten to a point that it's impossible to simply tell with words, and we are left to using art, film, poetry, music.
Spero che se questo non so se sono riuscito a rispondere, perché
So I hope I managed to answer your question.
Grazie mille per la domanda.
Thank you.
Chiovenda, you have a question as well?
I have a question, yes. I was thinking on the issue of migration, you know, how many of us here are people who have left our countries out of choice or not, but, you know, we've all had to maybe reinvent ourselves in a different country. And I was curious as to, for example, how the Hazara people, when they have left and they form communities in different parts, for example, in the UK, Basir, like what do they do? Where are they? If I want to find Hazara people in your city, for example, where should I look for them? And if I wanted to find them here in the UAE, where would they be?
Ormai adesso in ogni parte del pianeta potete trovare una Hazara. Io quando sono nel 2014, quando sono andato in Sud America, in Colombia, pensavo che in Sud America non esistesse nessuna Hazara, ma quando sono arrivato a Medellin ho ricevuto una chiamata da Cile, dai ragazzi Hazara che vivono lì da anni. Adesso è facile trovare gli Hazara che vivono, perché in tutti i paesi loro hanno qualche associazione, e poi dal 2010 in poi abbiamo creato Hazara International, un sito che ha anche un canale Facebook e Twitter, si chiama
Aspetta,
TV.
fammi tradurre, se no mi scordo. So Hazaras are pretty much everywhere. After all these years of migration, they're pretty much scattered all around the world. And when I went to South America in 2014, I was pretty sure I wouldn't meet any. But as soon as I got to Medellin in Colombia, Hazaras contacted me from Chile. And they had been there for many years. And so that is a pretty stark example of how the diaspora is very well spread. And in 2010, well, he was in Italy, of course. I mean, Basir was still in Italy, but they created Hazara International, which was a network, is a network of Hazaras around the world. Vai.
Oltre a Hazara International, in tutti i paesi noi abbiamo, in ogni paese gli Hazara hanno le loro comunità e sono molto attivi. Per esempio in Britannia abbiamo un'associazione degli Hazara British, però non è difficile trovare gli Hazara su internet. Appena scrivi gli Hazara di Britannia, gli Hazara di Australia, gli Hazara di Italy, e ogni paese ha, gli Hazara hanno la loro attività anche su internet, potete trovare.
So not only is there Hazara International, but every country has, of course, its presence and its activities, and mostly it is able, would be able to find the Hazara groups online. So I guess that, you know, Basir is implying that there's a very wide diversity of groups and approaches, and probably the better way to do so, to find Hazaras around, is over the internet, because they're visible, they're you know, they are out there.
Soprattutto in Australia adesso la comunità degli Hazara sono forte e hanno tante attività culturali che si può trovare online.
Especially in Australia, they have very strong community with a lot of activities online that are easy to find. If I can interject for a second, because Jimena was asking you also about the UAE. Do you have any information about Hazaras in the UAE?
Ci sono purtroppo nel paese come Arabia Saudita, Emirati Arabi, Qatar, Kuwait, sono gli Hazara, sono per lo più sono i lavoratori che lavorano lì. Non hanno tante attività purtroppo culturali perché vivono, cioè loro soltanto lavorano negli ambienti che non sono riusciti a creare una comunità a livello culturale.
So in the whole Gulf, in Qatar, in the UAE, in Saudi Arabia, there are Hazaras. Mostly they're menial workers, and no, they haven't been able to reconstruct, to build a cultural community as they have done elsewhere in the rest of the world. So yeah,
però loro sono attivi sempre ad aiutare quelli che hanno bisogno in Afghanistan.
But they still work to help Hazaras back in Afghanistan, I guess through remittances, no? Cioè mandando indietro il denaro del lavoro, cioè, yes, through remittances.
Per aiutare i bambini di andare a scuola, per qualsiasi quando succede qualche tragedia, di aiutare. Per esempio durante Giun Bishir tanti hanno aiutato i feriti per portare in India a curarli.
So especially so the money remittances are especially operationalized to enhance education for kids and as relief money in case of either disasters or terrorist attacks, mass killings.
Questo che fa tutti gli Hazara in altri paesi.
Sì, which is also what all other Hazaras in other countries do. It's not only the Hazaras here in the Gulf that, of course, send back money, particularly for these purposes, but also all around the world the same happens.
Oggigiorno che c'è internet, social media e gli Hazara sono riusciti a rompere quella catena che esisteva sempre per gli Hazara e in Afghanistan non potevano nemmeno studiare. Adesso hanno rotto quella catena, abbiamo tanti, cioè la mia generazione specialmente ha studiato, ora le cose che, anche se esiste e continua la tragedia, comunque possiamo raccontare quello che sta succedendo per gli Hazara, raccontare agli altri.
So especially for my generation, we mostly managed to go to school, as it wasn't the case for previous generations, and we were able to take advantage of the internet revolution practically, so that while discrimination, persecution, killings continued, now we are able to publicize what happens. So we are able to talk about it and to make other people aware of what's happening in Afghanistan.
Io personalmente sempre cerco di scrivere, soprattutto su Twitter. Io qui vi scrivo il mio indirizzo Twitter, potete seguire se volete.
So he works, well, he is very active, particularly on Twitter. So he's gonna, this is his handle on Twitter, on the chat. So if you are interested to follow his activities, you can find him there.
Thank you, Basir. We have one question from Nizar.
Yeah, hi. Do you mind if I ask the question in Italian directly to Basir?
Of course, go ahead.
All right. Ciao Basir, grazie per averci raccontato la tua storia, è molto interessante. hai parlato molto della presenza del Taliban in Afghanistan, però negli ultimi 20 anni credo che c'è anche la presenza americana, politica, militare nel vostro paese, e sarei curioso di sapere cosa ne pensi dell'effetto che ha fatto questa presenza sulla vostra comunità socialmente, ma anche la vedi in un modo positivo o più negativo?
So let me translate this for everybody. So you, Basir, you talk about the presence, and
I can do the question in English if you want.
Oh, yeah, right. Go ahead.
No, so I was asking for everybody else, basically that he mentioned a lot about the Taliban's presence in Afghanistan and that troubled relationship, to say the least. But also, the American military and political presence during the last 20 years in Afghanistan. I was wondering what his opinion was on that social effect and how he viewed, their plight in that context, and whether it was positive or helpful or negative.
Una domanda che si può rispondere scrivendo libri e libri. Però per gli Hazara, per quelli che sempre hanno vissuto con la tragedia in Afghanistan, dopo come l'operazione delle forze internazionali in Afghanistan ha creato un'atmosfera dove loro sono finalmente, dopo anni, sono riusciti a sentirsi vivo, no? A respirare. Però voi sapete che all'inizio l'operazione delle forze internazionali è iniziato con un messaggio molto forte, per esempio combattere contro i terroristi, portare pace, la costruzione del paese,
Aspetta, Basir,
cambiare la situazione delle donne, eccetera.
Fammi tradurre, se no mi scordo. So for the Hazaras in Afghanistan who have gone through tragedy for most of their lives, the arrival of the foreign troops, the coalition, meant liberation, meant being able to do things, to breathe, to being able to do things and to feel safe as they had not been able to do before. So from that point of view was positive. However, the messages, the ideological messages with which the operation started were very general, very broad, like helping women, bringing democracy, bringing freedom.
Fino al 2005 la presenza delle forze internazionali, soprattutto per gli Hazara, era una speranza. Perché senza la loro presenza con il governo talibano forse succedeva una tragedia dopo il quale non potevamo trovare nessun Hazara in Afghanistan.
So at least until 2005, the operations of the coalition troops have gone, so to speak, smoothly from this point of view, and they have meant that that they had denied the Taliban that regime, that political preeminence that would have meant for Hazaras the annihilation, the complete eradication of the Hazara ethnicity under a Taliban regime to continue into the 2000s.
Per questo motivo fino al 2005, finché noi avevamo quella speranza, la presenza delle forze internazionali. Noi abbiamo supportato sempre, fino adesso gli Hazara hanno supportato la presenza delle forze internazionali perché sempre avevano questa speranza di cambiamento.
So until 2005, the hope was alive. The hope that a real long-lasting change would happen, and for that reason Hazaras had tolerated up to that point the presence of foreign troops in Afghanistan.
Da 2005 in poi, come vediamo e tutti possono capire in tutto il mondo, quello che penso io, l'interesse della politica internazionale verso l'Afghanistan è cambiato.
So after 2005, as it's obvious to all who study these issues, the interest in the international community towards Afghanistan has changed and has decreased.
Questo si può interpretare in modo migliore se andiamo attraverso la come relazione internazionale, come funziona, però in questo momento non abbiamo tempo. Io penso che questa da 2005 in poi piano piano le forze internazionali e i paesi che militarmente erano in Afghanistan hanno cambiato la loro strada, perché anche nel loro linguaggio si poteva sentire, adesso si può capire meglio, quando piano piano hanno cambiato questo slogan di combattere i terroristi in Afghanistan. I terroristi e piano piano sono diventati i ribelli.
So this would have reasons and roots in international relations, and we don't have time to go into this, but a change was very stark after 2005, when seemingly the objectives of international troops changed. So from aspetta, che hai detto?
Questo che anche il loro linguaggio di presentare, no? Anche questo è cambiato, perché loro prima presentavano i talebani come terroristi, come un pericolo verso la sicurezza collettiva, no? Verso la sicurezza mondiale. Poi questo linguaggio piano piano è cambiato, perché adesso ormai i talebani non sono terroristi.
Sono ribelli.
Sì.
Okay, so the way that the Taliban were seen by, of course, the political leaders in the countries where troops were sent to Afghanistan changed, and in the beginning they were fighting terrorists who were supposedly a global threat, and after 2005 they started fighting rebels. So the idea of the Taliban shifted from a global threat to most likely a national threat. Rebels within Afghanistan, challengers of Afghanistan's authority, political authority, but not a global threat anymore.
In questo, interpretando questo cambiamento riguardo alla Convenzione di Ginevra era molto significativo, no? Perché i terroristi non hanno nessun diritto, però per la Convenzione di Ginevra quelli ribelli poi hanno un profilo preciso, che hanno certi diritti, possono fare certe cose. Questo cambiamento era molto forte.
So one of the most important aspects of all this is that under the Convention of Geneva, rebels, insurgents have rights as legitimate combatants. Terrorists don't. So the shift to being rebels practically granted the Taliban movement with political rights and political legitimacy that they didn't have before.
Oltre su questo cambiamento, oltre come i talebani ha avuto anche un effetto molto forte dentro l'Afghanistan, dentro la società, dentro, sulle etnie.
And this shift had an impact also within Afghanistan in the balance between ethnicities within the country.
Io penso che dopo questo cambiamento gli Hazara dell'Afghanistan erano ormai fuori quel circolo della politica americana nel paese.
And after this shift, so after 2005, Hazaras were let out of the circle of politics, of international politics in Afghanistan. They lost their centrality as a discriminated and persecuted ethnicity.
E per questo motivo, dopo il cambiamento, sempre quello che è successo negli Hazara, le forze internazionali e soprattutto americani sempre erano silenziosi.
Silenziosi rispetto a cosa, scusa?
A quello che succedeva.
After this shift again since 2005, so to speak, the representation of what was happening in Afghanistan, so the attacks on Hazaras, etc., lost traction in international circles. They stopped talking, and they stopped publicizing the injustices that were done to Afghanistan, to Hazaras in Afghanistan.
Nel 2017 nel Ministero di Affari Esteri americana ha pubblicato un reportage sulla discriminazione sistematica in Afghanistan. Questo reportage aveva presentato la situazione degli Hazara, perché avevano scritto che gli Hazara soffrono di questa discriminazione sistematica. Ma dentro l'Afghanistan non hanno fatto nulla quello che potevano fare.
Chi è che ha prodotto il reportage?
Ministero degli Affari Esteri americano.
So the State Department in 2017, the State Department did put out a report on discrimination against and persecution of Hazaras in Afghanistan, but they didn't take action upon the report. They simply let it go. Do you want to? How much time left do we have?
We have actually already gone over for quite a bit. So I was going to mention that we're about to wrap up.
Maybe.
Okay. Well, so Basir brought a poem that one of his poems that he has written. It's I don't know. I'm not sure. He would read it in Italian, and then we could do the translation.
Io penso che non abbiamo abbastanza tempo. Se Melissa poteva leggere solo in inglese, quel messaggio che il messaggio arriva, secondo me.
All right. So we'll read it for the sake of time. We'll read it in English.
All right. So the title of the poem is "Let Me Tell You Truly." How can I explain, my loved one, where this tale of timeless torture begins? In the larvae that long have hollowed out my heart, in the flame that torches me, or in your stubbornness? Let me tell you truly, loved one, that my love is an addict's abstinence, my wounds livid with quicklime. The story of this earth is but a tale of obstinacy. One nation mocked by power, spurned by its own people. Let me tell you truly, my loved one, there is no one here for anyone. Hearts hesitate imprisoned, lips sewn shut. Look at my forehead and the scar that sits there. This is the wound of blades sharpened in my land. Let me tell you truly, my loved one, when all is said and done, the rubble of Kabul, the shorn gardens of the north, the mass graves of Yakalang, and the shreds of a Buddha, by now too far removed, were never any more than the desires of a suffering people. Let me tell you truly, my loved one, that from Afshar to Kabul, there's only silence, that the breasts of mothers and sisters lie sliced forevermore upon the power cables of the city, that from the bottom of the ruins, still you hear the cry of children torn from the laps, now barren. Let me tell you truly, my loved one, there's no one here for anyone. The roads are poisoned, and poverty has traded bodies for bread, babies for copper. Perhaps you too understand, my loved one, that in the midst of all this misery, there is no room, no, not between the lines, for the woolen coat of any old Karzai. Here the world is coming to its close, and if you look carefully, my loved one, you can read its end between the furrows of my brow. Oh, I get chills from reading it. It's has so much meaning.
Thank you, Melissa.
Beautiful. Well, I mean, thank you, Basir.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you to everyone who attended. We will let you know the CineTalks that will be coming to Cinema Akil in 2021. But for now, thank you for attending our last one of the year, and thank you to Zayed University as well.
Thank you very much. Basir, I want to say to Basir, I have 100,000 questions, so I will follow him on Twitter and on Facebook.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Basir, grazie mille por tu tempo. Che bello. È molto interessante. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. Thank you, Melissa, Jimena, and thank you for the translation. That was very helpful. And hopefully we'll see you all in the next year, maybe in person, virtually, always in spirit. Have a good night.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thank you,
Bye.
Jimena.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye,
Bye,
everyone. Thank you so much.
Ciao,
Thank
ciao,
you.
ciao.
Basir.
Ciao,
Bye.
ciao.
Basir.